Hey everybody, welcome to Full Circle. I'm Anderson Cooper. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm sorry to be a couple of minutes late. I was actually at the Stephen Colbert show. They ran late. I'll be doing, you'll see that show later tonight along with my friend Andy Cohen. You can check that out. Again, I apologize for being late. Anyway, glad to be here now. Happy you can join us for this broadcast of Full Circle, our third one. A lot to get to tonight. I'm a little winded because I literally did just run here. I want to hear from you as we do every night, so send in your thoughts in the comments section. If you ever want to quiet those comments, just swipe to the right. Tonight, the Trump cleanup clarification tour enters day 3, and the explanations continue, well, frankly, to confound, and the Full Circle interview. The police chase right out of an action movie. We'll talk to this police department a little later in the broadcast to find out what happened and how it ended. Also tonight, 180, your chance to ask me some questions. We've got news from around the world on tonight's Full Circle, and I've traveled to some pretty far-flung locations over the years. I think more than 50 countries. I'd have to count them all. Ask me anything you want in the comments. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can for you. My question for you, President Obama has had one of his highest profile weeks since leaving the Oval Office. Do you want to hear more or less from President Obama about the current administration? Go ahead and vote. If you're watching live on your phone or tablet, you should see your choices on the bottom half of the screen. You can vote away, then swipe down to clear it. We'll get your final results before the end of the show. I'll start with the first thing first. I want to dig into a story that is dominating your feeds. One of the top trending stories on Facebook this second. For the second day running, the White House is being forced to backtrack on something that President Trump said about Russian interference in American elections. Watch and listen carefully as a reporter asked the president a question during a cabinet meeting.
Is Russia still targeting the U.S. Press, let's go. Make your way out. No, you don't believe that to be the case? Let's go.
So that sounds definitive enough, except in the new normal of the White House, it's not, according to the White House. A few hours later, Press Secretary Sanders was asked about the president saying no about the president's remarks.
I had a chance to speak with the president after his comments, and the president said thank you very much and was saying no to answering questions. The president and his administration are working very hard to make sure that Russia is unable to meddle in our elections, as they have done in the past and as we have stated.
So it took them 2 hours to come up with that explanation, despite what it looked like and sounded like. The White House now says, in effect, nothing to see here, just move along. Remember, it was only 24 hours ago that President Trump said he'd made a grammatical mistake standing next to Vladimir Putin. The president said this in Helsinki when asked if Russia had meddled in the 2016 election. He said, I don't see any reason why it would be. Instead, he said he misspoke. He should have said this, I won't see any reason why it wouldn't be, meaning Russia. Tonight, President Trump told CBS News he holds Vladimir Putin responsible for the meddling. I would, the president said, because he's in charge of the country. He said he told Putin, quote, we can't have meddling. We can't have any of that. Time now for our Full Circle interview. It involves a police chase, as I said, right out of a Hollywood movie. Las Vegas Metro PD says 2 murder suspects began firing at officers who were in high-speed pursuit. One officer returned fire through his windshield. I want to warn you, some of what you're about to see you might find disturbing. Take a look.
Watch out! Shots fired! Shots fired! Shots fired again!
Driving and firing at the same time, just incredible. Police say they were fired on more than 30 times. Now one of the suspects was actually shot and killed during the shootout. The other eventually fled on foot and was arrested. Joining me now is Deputy Chief Andy Walsh. Chief, thanks so much for being with us. You're the commanding officer of the officers we see in the video. I'm just curious, have you trained to fire through a windshield while driving? Is that something officers are trained to do? I've never seen that before.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to come on and tell this story. No, when you think about trying to create a scenario where you can do training, where you're shooting at one moving vehicle from another, I mean, obviously that's something that's really hard to do, especially in an urban environment like Las Vegas. But that specific type of scenario, we really just rely on our policy, which really covers the use of deadly force, and in extreme circumstances, something like this is where that would be covered. So obviously we had the extreme circumstances that this officer was confronted with, and his life being in jeopardy. that's where this would be covered.
Yeah, I mean, your department says the two suspects fired 34 shots at your officers and they fired back. I mean, that's an incredible number of shots to be fired. They're obviously, you know, in the front seat of the police car, nowhere really for them to go. It's amazing that beyond the two suspects, no one else was hurt.
Yeah, it's really an incredible story, and I think it paints a picture of you know, what police officers in our community and throughout the country are faced with when dealing with violent felony offenders like these two that really just had no regard for life and firing rounds indiscriminately at police officers where, you know, people were in danger, and after obviously committing a murder in broad daylight in a crowded car wash. So definitely violent people, and we took the actions that we did.
How are the officers?
So Officer Umana is doing well. I've been speaking to him a couple times since this happened, and you know, obviously he's going through the trauma of, you know, almost being killed by these individuals, and you know, it's going to be a long road for him just to be mentally and ready, physically ready to come back to work. But you know, other than that, he's, you know, doing what he needs to do and spending time with his family and, you know, recovering from this incident.
There have been some comments online, and I want you to be able to respond to them. Just in terms of safety, what do you say to people who may see this video and worry that these tactics are too aggressive or too unpredictable? Certainly no one else was hurt, as we should point out this time. Were other people's lives put at risk? Should the pursuit have continued? We've been seeing some comments like that. I just want you to be able to respond.
Well, yeah, they're great questions, you know, and obviously we scrutinize the use of deadly force, you know, very rigorously, and in a case like this, I think the important thing to remember is the danger to the community in this incident really wasn't from so much the officer and his tactics. It was because we had two people who had just committed a murder, and if we let them go free and we don't do everything we can to apprehend them, then the chance of someone else being injured or killed at their hands, that's not something that any police officer can live with. So obviously this is the extreme, obviously this is a unique case, but in a case like this, you know, we'll go back and we'll look at all the tactics and from the start of the pursuit to the use of deadly force and review it and make sure that we followed all the policies and procedures that we have in place. But you know, the risk to the community in this case too, it's always interesting when the comments go towards what the police officer did, but murder suspects shooting at the police get a pass for the danger that they put the community in. And I think our community and communities across the country want our police to aggressively pursue people who put people at risk this way, and that's what we did.
Yeah, well, I'm glad the officers are doing okay. Deputy Chief Andy Walsh, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for what you do and your officers do every day.
Thanks for having me on.
Now on to the 5 things you want to know. You voted on your top stories of this page. On this page, we spent the day digging into them. Here are your top 5. At number 5, more good news out of Thailand. The 12 members of the Wild Boar soccer team and their coach, who were rescued from a flooded cave, have been released from the hospital. That's great news. The first thing they did was share details on their nearly month-long ordeal at a news conference. The 25-year-old coach explained that the boys were curious to look inside the cave and explored it for about an hour before they decided to turn back. That's when they discovered the cave was flooded, their exit was blocked. To seek higher ground and a place to rest, the team, that's why they walked further into the cave, according to the coach, where they remained until their rescue. Now one of the players is thinking about another possible career path. Take a look.
I still want to follow my dream to become a professional footballer, but also have another dream, maybe a Navy SEAL officer.
It's a great dream, and obviously one Thai Navy SEAL officer died in that rescue attempt. We wish all of those kids and the coach and everybody who was involved in that rescue the best. Here's the number 4 story you voted to know more about today. EU regulators have hit Google with a record $5 billion fine. That's $5 billion with a B. The European Commission says Google is unfairly pushing its apps on smartphone users and thwarting competitors. EU officials argue that Google broke antitrust rules by making some smartphone manufacturers and network operators install Google Search and Chrome apps on phones before they were even sold. They also say that Google stopped manufacturers from selling phones using alternative versions of its Android operating system. $5 billion is the largest fine ever demanded by the Commission, and EU regulators have also hit Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Facebook with huge fines in recent years. Google says it's going to appeal that decision. Now let's move to the number 3 thing you wanted to know about today, and this is something I really want you to see for yourselves. Wildfires are burning in the Arctic Circle. That's right, you heard me right. According to EU officials, there are at least 11 wildfires right now within the Arctic Circle, and a total of more than 60 fires are burning across Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Russia. Countries better known for frozen tundra than flaming timbers. Sweden is hardest hit with 4 communities evacuated and tens of thousands of people told to stay inside. I was just in Finland. There's a heat wave there. It's been an unusually hot, dry summer across the far north, with temperatures set to rise even higher in the coming days. And the number 2 story you voted on, former President Obama speaking his mind. He's in South Africa urging women on the African continent to get more involved in social movements as well as governing, because some men certainly have not been exactly in their best behavior lately. Here's what he said.
Men have been getting on my nerves lately. I mean, I just, every day I read the newspaper and I just think, like, brothers, what's wrong with you guys? I mean, what's wrong with us? All right, I mean, we're violent, we're bullying, you know.
No official comment on who former President Obama was referring to there. I'll leave that for you to decide. The former president's remarks come on the heels of a speech Tuesday commemorating the late Nelson Mandela, where he spoke about what he described as the utter loss of shame in political leaders and warned against what he calls strongman politics. Mr. Obama is using the trip to stir up support for his foundation's mission to, quote, inspire and empower people to change their world. Which brings me back to my question for you tonight. Do you wish former President Obama would weigh in more or less about the Trump administration? Go ahead and vote. If you're watching live on your phone or tablet, you've got that option on the bottom of your screen. We'll get you final results before the end of the show tonight. And the top story you want to know more about today, an Australian man's harsh words for President Trump. Anthony Maislin lost his father and 3 children when Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 was shot down over Ukraine territory controlled by pro-Russian separatists. Now, the flight was traveling from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when it crashed 4 years ago, just on yesterday. To mark the somber anniversary, Maislin posted a letter to President Trump on Facebook, which reads in part, and I'm quoting, "That passenger flight, MH17, was shot out of the sky and 298 innocent people were murdered is an irrefutable fact. That the plane was hit by a Russian missile has been proven to be an irrefutable fact." He also added that the man whose arse you've just been kissing did this and continues to lie about it is an irrefutable fact. The scathing post comes just hours after President Trump met with Russian President Vladimir Putin and failed to address the plane crash or confront him over interfering in the 2016 election. Russia has repeatedly denied involvement in the MH17 crash. The tragic plane crash is, of course, a story that I remember well, and with your top stories coming from every corner of the globe tonight, I'll stick with the theme. In tonight's 180, you've got questions about international travel and reporting. Time for me to answer some of those questions. Debbie asks, what 3 places struck you as, hey, I wouldn't mind living here someday? That's a really good question. I wish I'd seen it before, so I'd given it more time to think. I mean, listen, I've talked about this. I love Haiti. I could see myself living there. Just being in Finland was incredible. I'd never spent any time there. Helsinki was amazing. It was obviously very warm, hot weather, but I'm told it's not always that great at this time of the year, but it was beautiful. I love Rome. I love a lot of places in Brazil, Rio, Trancoso in Brazil. I guess that's about 3, or maybe that's 4. Heather wants to know, what's your favorite place you've covered, not because of the event you were covering, but because of the people you met? Wow, that's an impossible one to answer. I mean, I've met so many extraordinary people, and even often in the midst of tragedy, in the midst of darkness and you know, where terrible things are happening, you see people at their best. You see the heart, the true heart of people. In the tsunami in Sri Lanka, you know, I met people who, you know, clinging to trees as the floodwaters were sweeping by, would reach out, you know, with a hand to save somebody else who's being swept away. And in Haiti, in the wake of the earthquake, you know, people who, you know, didn't have any equipment were digging through rubble for days with bare and bloodied hand to save complete strangers. Susie says, I know Haiti is a special place for you because of the earthquake. How often do you visit? It's a great question. I think I've been there twice in the last year. I was there just a couple, like maybe a month ago. Time is sort of all blending together, but maybe a month or 5 weeks ago. And before that, I was there earlier in 2017. So usually I try to go at least twice a year. Melanie asked if you've had the opportunity, would you travel to the International Space Station? Totally. That would be awesome. Not sure how that would work, but I was already late for this show on Facebook tonight. So if I was traveling to the International Space Station, who knows how late I would be. Jennifer wants to know what keeps you grounded, sense of home after countless travels and reporting. I don't know. I mean, I think there's, frankly, going to the places that I go to, that is what keeps me grounded. Seeing people in extreme situations who are, you know, waking up every day, keeping their head up high, and trying to provide for their families and lead good and decent lives full of dignity in a situation which many of us couldn't even imagine living in those are the people who keep me grounded, and those are the people when I close my eyes at night, I still think about and dream about. Thanks very much for your questions. Want to move on to the goods to finish things off on a good note. You know, often law enforcement videos become viral when something negative is captured on tape, so it's nice when we get a chance to cover something like this. Patrol Deputy Vic Ekanem of the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department accepted a dance-off challenge from a young boy, which was recorded by his partner, by Ekanem's partner. The deputies had responded to the home for what turned out to be an accidental 911 call. The deputies say the kids seemed timid around them, so they decided to take a little extra time to put them at ease, which turned into this pretty amazing dance-off. I wish I could do that well. This doesn't seem all that unusual for the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. A quick check of their Facebook page turned up this video. The department took on the lip sync challenge that has been sweeping across law enforcement departments around the country this summer. Take a look. Kudos to them and all the men and women who devote their lives to keeping us safe and aren't afraid to make us laugh a bit as well. That's almost everything I can tell you, except there's a couple more things you told me. First, here's what you thought of former President Obama's high-profile week. 76% of you want to hear more of what he thinks of the current administration. 24% of you could do with less, frankly. 77% and 20, it just changed now, I'm told. So want to see less. There's also your reaction to the show and today's news. Those emojis have been flying by the whole show. We caught them all. Looks like overall your strongest emotion was love again. It's always nice. And again, I'm sorry for being a bit late today. I told you I literally ran into the newsroom after coming over here from Stephen Colbert's studio. When I said I ran, that's, yeah, me running like a goofball. I run really goofy. I wasn't kidding. I also ran down the street, which I think I recorded on Snapchat just very briefly. Not on Snapchat, on Instagram stories. Anyway, not the greatest form, I'll admit it, but hey, I did my best, and again, I apologize. That does it for Full Circle. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you'll join again tomorrow on our page here to vote on which things you want to know. I'll get you more on those stories and be back live at 6:25 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. I promise, 6:25 p.m. Until then, I hope you tune into AC 360 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on CNN. I'll see you soon.